Hey guys, Zom Fox here, and Week 3 of the 2025 UFL season kicks off in just a few hours as we have the Arlington Renegades playing the Birmingham Stallions in the first game in Birmingham this season. And man, this week is gonna be a good one. Look, these games you could easily see either team win because there's been a few really massive moves, including coaches, a massive trade, multiple big names going to IR. All four of these games, despite how some of the spreads are pretty wide, honestly could go either way, making this a very interesting week, and it's one that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see. Now, again, these are my game picks, my score predictions coincide with the betting picks. In all honesty, this is a week where if I am a sports bettor, I'm probably avoiding because this is just such a weird one. Now, if you have a conviction, that's one thing, but let's just get right into it and talk about why these games are so close, with the first pair of games being the Friday Night Football game between the Renegades and Stallions, and then the Saturday game of the Roughnecks versus the Showboats. Now, I will be streaming a live play-by-play of the Renegades Stallions game today at 7:45 p.m. EST is when it starts. The spread is plus 4.5 for Arlington. Over/under is 39.5. Now, this is when I got the images. I got these images late last night, and then I'm recording this just a couple of hours before it gets posted. I know the Roughneck Showboats spread and one of the other ones have changed. These spreads keep changing because, again, these are very tough games to call. I remember early on when I was just looking, this used to be 3.5, this Renegade Stallions game. This is a tough one to call because it's one of those things where Corral is the starter, right? Alex Magoo is hurt. He's on IR. So Corral's going to get those legit QB1 reps, so the offense should look better than it did against Michigan. Then it's a question of, is Arlington's defense better than Michigan's defense? Arlington's defense has played really well, but it's been against the two worst teams in the league, whereas Michigan's defense has played better teams. Granted, Memphis's offense isn't elite, but it's better than Houston and San Antonio. So, how well is Arlington going to play against this defense, and how well is Birmingham's offense going to play against Arlington's defense? It's a very questionable game to call. Both these two teams have this is the one game where there's really not any massive change going on from one team to the other. Every other team has had at least one really major move. I wouldn't really say that with these two teams. So it's a very tough one to call because both these teams do feel like they need this win. But in terms of who needs it more, and considering the fact this is a championship night, I am going to go with the Stallions winning this 24-20. I do think Arlington makes it a close enough game to cover. I do think we hit the over. The over-under, we're starting to see Vegas hit those numbers. We see a couple of games at the 35.5 mark. I do think this is an over. Now, the reason I think it's an over, Arlington only put up, 11 points against Houston because of the fact that they just, couldn't stop shooting themselves in the foot with all those penalties. I don't expect that to happen here. I think that they're going to, play a more disciplined style of football, and it's going to help them end up scoring more. As for Birmingham, having Corral there for the full time instead of just, coming in, having to be the backup turned starter, but be the legit starter, I think this offense puts up a few more points, and they end up putting up a 24-20 game. I don't think there's going to be some sort of barn burner, 35-30 game, but I think this is going to be one of the higher scoring games so far of the season. Yes, I know the over-under, it's been just an under central. I think there's been maybe one game that's hit the over so far. But this is one where I do think it will. It's just one of those where I feel like we're kind of due for one of those types of games. And Friday Night Football games is so far and getting a bit better and better. I think this is going to be the first legitimately good one instead of just the Panthers. Stanzers are okay. But overall, I think that Birmingham does pull this off. They need this win, especially with all the issues with Michigan, which we'll get to when we talk about Michigan. They kind of know that if they win now, they can kind of solidify one of those two playoff spots in the UFL conference. So I'm going to go with them. Arlington doesn't need this win. It's in Birmingham. If you lose this game, it sucks, but you're still 2-1. So yeah. Now, the Houston Roughnecks Memphis Showboats. Now, the big change on this game is I believe John Atkins just got moved to IR for the Showboats, but the big one is this Marcus Sims trade. Of course, the Roughnecks traded one of their offensive linemen for Panthers All-UFL receiver Marcus Sims. Now you have what I think most people would agree is the best 1-2 punch in the league. Justin Hall and Marcus Sims is just insane. So you have two top-tier receivers, arguably two of the top 5 best receivers in the league, on your team. Now, the issue, you still have Anthony Brown starting. Yes, he's still starting. Apparently, having one good drive across 2 weeks is good enough to stay. Which, by the way, I know that none of these guys have been fired, but I think it's hilarious how many of these coaches have resigned or left due to disputes, yet Curtis Johnson's still here. It's wild. Now, the point is with this game, This is when I do think the Roughnecks could pull off the upset, and the reason is because of adding Sims. Look, Anthony Brown hasn't been great. We all know that. But you have two top tier receivers, and it can make it a lot easier for him to do something. And if you're scared of those receivers, it could result in the ground game being better. But, I mean, look, this is a 4.5 point spread. The over under is 35.5. That is a really low over under, and I think that a lot of it is because they're expecting Houston's defense to be really well. Again, Houston's defense didn't really play great against Arlington. It was more so Arlington screwing over Arlington. All that being said, I think Memphis pulls off the W, and I do think they actually cover. Yeah, I made it sound like they're not. No, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win this by almost 10 points. In fact, I do think this hits the over. Look, I think that the Houston offense is going to have their best game purely because of the addition of Sims. I know he's not going to be like the full star, at least that's not what the initial depth chart said. But talent is still talent, right? He is one of those receivers. When he's on the field, he's going to create some, he's going to create some panic. And again, Anthony Brown did give us one good drive last week. Maybe he gives us two this week. As for the Showboats, the offense had two good drives in week 1 under Jim Turner. Ken Wisnut comes back, becomes head coach. The offense may not, have dominated, but they were much better than in week 1. I think in week 2, we're going to see the best offense we've seen from this team. And the reason for that is because this is really the week 2 offense in a lot of ways, considering the fact, this is the second week under Ken Wisnut in a game. And usually the second week is when we see improvement and all that. So I think the Showboats offense has its best game. And again, Memphis has played really tough defenses so far. Okay, Michigan pre-injuries and then DC. That's pretty damn tough. You could argue those are the two best. Again, I'm not saying they are. You could argue those were the two best defenses. And I say were because we'll get to Michigan once we get to them about what happened. But overall, this is a really solid team. The Showboats, they see the weaknesses in Michigan after what's happened this week. They know it's their time to strike. They need to get a win. They cannot start the season 0-3. They've always beaten the Houston Roughnecks. They're 2-0 against them, after they rebranded to the Roughnecks. They're going to keep that trend going. They're going to beat them. They're going to cover the spread. They're going to hit the over. Winner, Showboats. Now, the second pair of games. You have the Sunday games with the San Antonio Brahmas and Michigan Panthers, which I will be streaming that game as well, starting at 11:45 p.m. or a.m. EST. And then, of course, the Defenders St. Louis Battlehawks, the big rivalry game. These are two games where I'm very shocked at the spread. These are games I would imagine the spread would be something really small. But again, a lot of this is because people aren't fully in the know with the Panthers. So let's talk about the Panthers-Brahmas game. The Brahmas lost A.J. Smith. Apparently, all this stuff has come out. It's pretty much that he butted heads with Wade. He butted heads with how the team was constructed, kind of pissed off about it, and he left, right? Team wasn't doing as well. He was upset about it. Basically was, in a way, blaming the head coach and the GM, and so he's gone. The Panthers. No more Marcus Sims. No more Matt Colburn, he's on IR. And no more Breland Speaks, he's on IR. You just lost 3 of your top 7 most important players, I think it's fair to say. Right? Those 3, then Perkins, Mariner, Gidna, that's like your 6, Nakua. So you could say you're 3 of your top 7 players for sure. Like that. Literally within 48 hours of each other. That hurts. So this is why I think it's a tough game for Michigan. Look, I understand you got to replace a guy that gets hurt, but when you lose 3 of your top players like that, that's insane. Now, CLC Mariner, PFF-wise, last year was the best receiver in the league. And this year, he's still been a very solid player, but that's still a big loss. The offensive line, look, the idea of trading him because of injury history is wild, especially considering the fact that your biggest issue right now is Perkins refusing to run the football. I would say I expect Perkins to run, but I don't know for sure. The bottom line, I do think Michigan wins, but I do think it's a low-scoring 17-12 game. I think we're going to see the best outing from the San Antonio defense, and I think the Michigan defense overall steps up, but really it's just a matter of the offense with San Antonio. This isn't like DC, which we'll get to with their defense coordinator. Losing A.J. Smith is you're losing a guy that is an offensive mind kind of guy. So the offense should look different, and that could benefit them, but that could also hurt them. Look, some people have been trying to defend Kellen Mond. The fact is Mond has not been great. As I said before, he's not terrible on the level of an Anthony Brown, but he hasn't been good. So I don't expect this offense to just magically dominate, especially against the Panthers defense, even without Breland Speaks. You still have Frank Gidna, you still have Kai Nakua, you still have other great players. DJ Miller just had 2 interceptions this past week. But overall, I do think that San Antonio keeps this a close enough game. I think that this is going to be a defensive battle where Michigan ends up having one or maybe 2 great drives with Perkins. Other drives just result in the field goal. Maybe they get some sort of defensive touchdown. But I just can't see this being a high-scoring game. I don't know, man. I don't know what it is. I just don't see it. This one, though, again, this game could easily go the other way. San Antonio could pull off the upset because of the issues with Michigan. Their offense is going to take a step back, and that's why I think that they only put up 17 points, but we'll see. Now, as for that's the spread of the week, the Defenders Battlehawks. Look, I'll admit, as much as the next guy, I think that DC's been a bit overrated, mainly their offense. But no way should this be a 7-point spread. That's wild. DC's defense is by far the best unit St. Louis has faced. For how much credit I've given Manny Wilkins and how much better he's looked, I've had to mention multiple times the asterisk. He has played against 2 very, very, very bad defenses so far. Right, San Antonio's defense we didn't expect to be bad. So far, it's been pretty bad. He's going to have to face a real defense in the Defenders. And yes, I know they lost Greg Williams. He's going, to Tennessee State University with Reggie Barlow. Had to go a bit early because he's the DC. But his son Blake is taking over as DC. The defense will not change too much, but it will be a slightly bit different. I think people saying it's not going to be different at all. It's going to be a bit different, but it ain't going to be as different as San Antonio's offense, so it's still going to be a really solid unit. And as for St. Louis, Jacob Saylors is the MVP to me through 2 weeks. Manny Wilkins has looked really solid this year, but he has to play a real defense this week. I think that they continue the trend. The Battlehawks so far have been they went from 31 to 26 or 25. They basically lost a touchdown almost in terms of points scored. I think that happens again. I think the final score is 2015. Battlehawks beat DC. I could see this being a DC upset. I really could. But I'm going to go with St. Louis winning because I think that overall St. Louis is a better team. The offense on DC, you could very easily argue, is the 3rd weakest unit in the league. After, of course, San Antonio and Houston, you could easily argue that. Tayamu has just not looked good this year. The ground game, it got a bit better in week 2, but so far hasn't been great. Now, like I said, this is the make or break week for my opinion on Abram Smith. If he plays really well here or he improves again, that's good. If he stays the same or goes back to what he was in week 1, then it's time to panic for the running game on DC. But overall, DC is a defense team with a very questionable offense. The win over Memphis had a lot to do with just kind of the defense getting a big stop at the end, because overall Memphis's offense was better than DC's, right? Memphis had that 6-minute drive in the 4th quarter, and it's just that DC's defense did its job. But when it comes to this game, it's just a matter of St. Louis is a better team, I think, at this point. Right? Historically, St. Louis has been an overhyped, overrated team. Historically. 2023, there's people who still believe they should have won the championship and made the playoffs over the Renegades. 2024, there's people who believe that if AJ was healthy, they would have won. They've been overrated, but they are finally the legit best team in the league. There's no overrating or overhyping them. They are the best team in the league right now. Because, yes, they played 2 bad teams. But Arlington was not able to put up a complete game both times. St. Louis was. Both games, St. Louis had a great offensive performance and a great defensive performance. Haven't seen that from really any other team. Not even really. We haven't seen that from any other team. Birmingham has yet to have a solid offensive performance in general. Michigan had half of one in week 1 when they had Perkins under center. Memphis was somewhat close in week 2. DC has never been close because of their offense. Houston and San Antonio, don't even get me started. Arlington's the 2nd closest, but week 2's offense. St. Louis has put up 2 complete games. I think they put up a 3rd one. Their offense is going to step back again. We're not going to see a triple touchdown game from Jacob Saylors again. But they're going to win the game because they're the better team. St. Louis wins 2015. Now, as for overall records, this past week was a rough one. Overall, really, really weak week. Went 1-3 on the spread. Went 2-2 in the other ones. I didn't realize this, but I did actually correctly predict the Roughneck score of 9 points. I completely spaced that. I was only the DC game, I was 1 point off DC getting the correct score. But I completely spaced in the fact that I predicted Houston to score 9 points in their game last week. And that was correct. So we are now up to 4 perfect team score predictions, which is always nice to see. As for overall records, we're still positive, very positive on the money line, but we are now officially 2-1. Over-under, we're a bit positive. We're more positive on that than the spread. We are negative, but that's only because of pushes and all that. So, hopefully this week is better. Again, so far we are still technically not really, so far this year we haven't been great. right? We did have the one perfect betting prediction game, and we had the one team score prediction. So hopefully this week is better, but that'll do it. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. Again, we do at least 4 videos a week, as well as a YouTube short on the weekly players of the week, 2 live streams a week. Again, it's been a pretty wild season so far. If you enjoyed this video and you've been a fan of the channel for a long time, think about becoming a community member. You can use the link down below or the join button down below. And as always, guys, have a great night.